and it is time to talk rugby because it's a Munster weekend. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Good. The Joey Carbery news obviously is the thing that's been dominating most of the discussion around it. We were saying earlier on that between opportunity, injury and form, he hasn't really, it's his first Six Nations start. He's 26. It's only his 9th international start, and tomorrow is huge in the context of this guy's career.
Yeah, it is. I think obviously it's a blow to have Johnny Sexton out of the team, and the debate has gone for a long time about, the gap between Johnny Sexton and the rest. I think there was so much hope and kind of optimism around Joey Carbery, putting pressure on Johnny Sexton, and he's shown glimpses of that over the years. I think issues have been around injuries and him not getting a run of games with Munster and Ireland, but he's certainly a very, very talented player, and it's crazy to think he's 26 caps and this is his first Six Nations start. I think that's probably something that kind of jumped out at a lot of people yesterday, that was the case for him. But I think the way Ireland are playing will benefit him. The fact that a lot of it is there's a lot more shape and attack and quality in that attack that they're trying to achieve, and he's got to deal with a different type of pressure, which can be difficult. And I think Sexton, is no doubt about it, was, had this mental strength that the opposition trying to rattle him or get at him physically, he was able to cope with that. So that's the challenge. I think it's the pressure that France are going to put on him, and defensively as well. I think they're going to try and run the Mofana, the 12 who plays instead of Jonathan Dante down his channel a lot, and his back row have got to try and help him. And I think if he gets a good start in the game, there's no doubt he has that talent and quality to do well. But no matter what way you look at it, Sexton is a loss. I think maybe it's a good thing it's happening now. This is a big game for Joey Carbery. He's not a young fella anymore, and
on that,
on
that exact point, then he hasn't been selected over Sexton, and you're alluding to the fact that it's probably good World Cup preparation in a lot of ways. What, if anything, does Carbery bring to the party that Sexton doesn't?
Well, his running game is, himself athletically, he's very, very quick, and he's evasive, and he's a different type of stepper than Johnny Sexton. So I think if he gets quality ball and off multi-phase, he can be very effective running himself, because he's very quick and he has that sidestep and that wavy run. He's got to nail his kicks from hand, and I think that just the pressure, dealing with the pressure. And we know how good Sexton is at that. Sexton's ability to take the ball to the line. So that's a confidence thing, and that's I suppose a real belief in what Sexton does, and experience as well. So, Joey Carbery he's been in around the group for years. He's been in this international setup. I just think he has a little bit of X factor. We keep talking about it, but we don't see it consistently enough. We've seen glimpses of it. So what does he bring instead of Johnny Sexton? Well, I think if Ireland are to go all out attack, his running game probably can be a real positive for Ireland. But most of the time, he's just going to be linking up with players. I think we've seen in recent games, the 12 being that first receiver with your fly half out the back. That may give Carbery a little bit more space, but it's down to good decision making as well. So Sexton is still a better player. I think in the overall package, Carbery has that decisive, indecisive, I should say, ability to do something special. So hopefully we can see something like that. See, even if it's one big moment that he makes a break or can stretch his legs and put someone away. I think that would be probably the point of difference. But it's all the nitty gritty stuff, the basics, dealing with the pressure. leadership, all that stuff, that Sexton is a loss.
We could equally be talking in as much detail about Jack Carty obviously on Monday morning, because he's potentially coming in for 15 or 20 minutes, and he's been brilliant for Connacht this season, Quinny. Like, it's a lot of people making the case we were discussing earlier on. Was there an argument for him over Carbery here, or what are you thinking if it does come to it, 15-20 minutes to go, game in the melting pot, and Carty is in the mix?
Yeah, there was an argument because of the way he's played this season, the amount of games he has played. Joey Carbery's been out for a number of weeks, a long period of time. So, of course, there was an argument. We will see Jack Carty probably at some stage. I'd be a lot more confident with Jack Carty nowadays, particularly with what's happened to him after the World Cup and the way his confidence dipped, and he struggled probably for form in Connacht as well. So I think we've seen but both of these guys bring a great excitement to the game, and if you give them time and space. The problem, Adrian, with international rugby is you don't get that time and space. It's always been the point of difference over the years when I played, and people said, what's the difference? You've less time, you've more quality players on the field, putting pressure on you, being really aggressive, very little weaknesses in the opposition at the top level. And that's the thing, is making good decisions under pressure. And both of them, if Jack Carty comes on, it's about what kind of confidence Andy Farrell, Mike Cass, Paul O'Connell, Simon Easterby defensively have instilled in this team. And look, the signs are good that they're in a good place and that they believe they can go to Paris. And if they impose their game, hopefully it will be, a situation where, first and foremost, Joey Carbery can play well, kick his penalties, do the basics well. I think the one area he's got to get right is defensively, to be strong. Sexton doesn't soak tackles if somebody runs at them. He either stops them on the game line or wraps them in a way that he can lift people back over the game line. So he's very, very strong there. So I think Joey Carbery has to get the basics right first. And overall, I think the team is in a good place. And part of me really thinks that, if they get get themselves into the game and settle, that they're very capable of putting France under pressure.
And this would have been, were it not for Sexton's injury, the first time that Andy Farrell would have named an unchanged team during his tenure. So he is stumbling upon, or he's not stumbling, he's arrived at what he decides is his starting 15 at this point. Is that a good thing, Alan? Because it does seem that the Carbery and that conversation has been, I guess, positioned in a sense of this will be good for Ireland in the long run. If we look at the other 14 positions, is it good for Ireland in the long run, the sense of a lot of lads having their place at the top of the pile when it comes to their own jersey?
I suppose it's for and against. If you have a very settled team, it can give you cohesion on. We're 18 months away or out from a World Cup. It's probably, there's a lot of talk the last time about peaking too early. No matter what happens at this World Cup, the next World Cup, it's probably more difficult to get past the quarterfinal stage with the possibility of obviously having Scotland in the group and having to beat them. Finishing first or second, you're only going to get New Zealand or France most probably. So it's still going to be very difficult. There's still a lot of players. I think Andy Farrell he's capped a lot of players since he's taken over, which there's a fair bit of a transition has taken place. I think there is some players still who will have a say before the World Cup. Robert Balakoon, Mike Lowry, James Hume, Gavin Coombs could come into the mix. Probably need more second rows to put their hands up and really challenge the kind of top three that are there, which are Ty Byrne, James Ryan and Ian Henderson. But I think it is for and against. I think, obviously you can just play and do what's in front of you. And there's been a lot of change. Last summer, there was a lot of players capped in Japan and USA. New Zealand's going to be a very difficult challenge for them in the summer. But, you're getting a lot of players. Look, Mac Hansen has come into the team. More players kind of putting their hands up, and one or two areas. The area we're talking about, is the 10 position. Is he'd love to be heading to the World Cup with 2 or 3 people vying for that number 10 jersey, and putting more pressure on Johnny Sexton. And there's going to be change there, whether it's the end of this season or whether he goes to the World Cup. But that's one of the areas where you need to get more depth. So I think it's great to have a settled team. There's a lot of change to this team. The back row are completely different. So I think there's a lot of positives in that as well.
We were having a conversation yesterday about how that back row managed to target Antoine Dupont over the course of tomorrow afternoon. Is there almost a semi-man marking job that you can do, or a man targeting job that you can do coming off the line quickly to target Dupont if you are, say, a Josh van der Fleer, for example?
I think you've got to be careful. I think the best way to target Antoine Dupont is to not give him any opportunities around the breakdown, and that defensive effort applies to everybody. If he sees a little gap, he'll try and snipe through it, and if he gets in behind you, can be so dangerous and quick, and the lines he runs are exceptional. In a sense, I'm not really sure how you track a guy who can pop up anywhere because of his footballing ability. If any player makes a break for Toulouse or France, we've seen that in the last couple of years, he seems to just track that line on the inside. So that's probably an area where I would think of whether it's Gibson Park that kind of follows him or tracks him on the inside, or, if he gets in behind and they get their hands through, that somebody is there to make that tackle. But of course, I think at the breakdown, you want to make it really difficult for him, that he doesn't get really quick ball all the time. And Ireland has shown us an ability to choke tackle and put a lot of pressure on the opposition breakdown. So first and foremost, I think you just want to make it uneasy for him, the type of ball he's getting. Quick free kicks, stuff like that, you've got to have someone back 10 yards. And I'm sure that they've worked on that somebody is back there really quickly, or somebody who's standing there shoots forward to make that tackle if he taps and goes. So obviously it's down to trying not to give him quick quality ball and make it easy for him.
Do you expect Ireland to tweak anything in terms of their level of adventure tomorrow, just given the quality of opposition and given the fact that it is away from home?
Yeah, I would expect them to obviously have looked at France and see, where there's gaps or weaknesses. We saw from the crossfield kick last week from Italy for the try they scored that, they were a little bit narrow. Villiers isn't the biggest winger in the world. Can they target him there? I think defensively they come so hard off the line. For me, there's a little bit of space. Again, Italy put 1 or 2 little chip kicks in behind them when they were coming so hard, and there was a bit of space there. So they'll have looked at things like that and see where there's space on the field. You might only exploit these things once in a game on. You might try it, and France might have that covered this week. I would expect them to show us something different from possibly strike plays. If they get off line outs, whether they go midfield, come back to blind side, show us something a little bit different. Obviously, Joe Schmidt's teams were renowned for coming up with, some sort of a strike play off a scrum or a line out that scored tries in big games from over the years. So I think we might see something. Whether it comes to fruition and works perfectly, who knows? But for me, what you've got to do against France is try and get to multi-phase and hope that, even though Sean Edwards has done a fantastic job with him around the defensive side of their game and their work rate, you've got to try and build multi-phase and hope that, if you can force a penalty or if you can get in behind them, that they get a bit disjointed.
Just a wider question, Quinny, on Simon Zebo. I don't know if you saw that. He was talking to a French rugby podcast during the week, and he was talking about the atmosphere in the Ireland camp. And obviously, look, he has beef, obviously, with the previous management. But that notwithstanding, he's been involved in camps under Andy Farrell and that management team. He has mates who are in there, so he knows what's going on, and he talks about the atmosphere that's in there and how good it is. And look, he does make comparison with the previous regimes, but it looks like everybody's happy, everybody's on the same sheet. It's winning rugby. How much? I mean, look, a lot of it depends obviously on what happens this weekend. But how much of a lid do we need to keep on how things are going, or what's your reading on? I'm sure you're in contact with people in and about it as well. What's your reading on a management team, and Andy Farrell particularly, who not that long ago we were talking about, you know, how much road has this guy got, and very much has turned the corner with it.
Yeah, there was pressure, huge pressure in them last year, and around the way they were playing and the type of rugby that we were seeing, and results as well. Yeah, I think it's hugely important, and I don't think anybody's getting too excited. I had this feeling of what happened in 2018 with the Grand Slam, and it's experiences, isn't it? It's the same as when you are a player and you go to certain places, whether you're with Ireland or whether I was with Munster. You learn from experiences, and sometimes it can only be just becoming a little bit complacent in your performance and certain things that are happening in the group. But one thing that is a real common denominator throughout sport at all levels, and I'm a big believer in this, is if the players feel good and they're happy and confident in what they're trying to do, it's a much better place than to be indecisive and lacking confidence and nervous and worrying about what could happen. I think mentally, to have them in a good place at the moment, and it comes down to the management. I think, you know, Paul O'Connell probably would have brought a fair bit of composure, even though he can be incredibly intense, Paul, in what he's trying to, as a player and as a coach, which is a great thing. He can make people feel really strong and belief in themselves. But look, I think what Zebo is saying, and I understand it, that, you know, they're full of confidence and they're full of belief and they're happy. Does it give them a guarantee of results in sport? No, it doesn't. Will we be talking on Monday about, you know, them going backwards? Or sometimes you have to take steps backwards, and that's just the way it goes. But for me, they've just got to stick to their own game and try and, you know, impose what they've been doing in November and last week on the opposition. And I think invariably those passes and those moments and those positive things that happen in a game happen easily when you're in a good place. And that makes sense.
It does. What's your call on it?
I was probably... It's a very difficult one. It's not me sitting on the fence. One side of me thinks, yeah, I just really think that they have a great chance, but having a great chance doesn't guarantee the result. I think France are a very powerful side, and that's the one area, their physicality and their power, and they're gone with the 6-2 split in the bench. There's a real belief in French rugby that this team can go on and not just win a Six Nations, but win a World Cup. Galtier has done a brilliant job, as Edwards and Ibanez. So it's a huge task. If Ireland lose the game, is it disaster? No, because if we win the game, will we be getting too far ahead of ourselves?
We will, yeah.
Yeah, probably. Look, I think it's going to be very, very tight. I think with Sexton coming out of the team yesterday, it concerned me. But another part of me then thinks we're going to have to live without Johnny Sexton, whether it be next year, after the World Cup, or whatever. So Joey Carbery has to try and step up, and Jack Carty, and see if they can, you know, will it take a little bit of sting out of the French, because they love playing against Johnny Sexton. So I don't know. You're splitting the hairs. I think France are probably the team that are going to edge it, but I really hope that Ireland can trouble them, and if they're in the game, I think if Ireland are in the game late on, I think they'll win it, because they're incredibly fit, tenacious, resilient, and their work rate is through the roof. And if they're in the game late on, I think Ireland will win it. But I'm probably leaning towards France. I'm changing my tact again. I'll change it by tomorrow again.
Good time for us to get rid of you. Good man. Thanks, Quiddy.
Cheers, lad.